What's up everyone, this is White Pointer bringing you a video version of one of my top 10 lists published on Game FAQs. This one is the top 10 MS-DOS exclusive side-scrolling platformers. If you prefer to read this list rather than watch it, the link to the written version is in the description. Who else grew up during the glory days of MS-DOS PC gaming? When you needed to fiddle with your auto-execute bat and config sys files, or perhaps needed to restart your system with a special boot disk in order to get a game running? When you needed to test out all of the various sound drivers in the game setup application to try to find one that worked with your hardware? Alright, maybe that part of DOS gaming wasn't really glorious, but the games themselves were often worth the hassle. The DOS platform was home to a large variety of really fun games of all genres. First-person shooters, strategy, flight sims, puzzle games, role-playing games, racing games, point-and-click adventures. One genre that was somewhat underrepresented though was 2D side-scrolling platformers, so I decided to make a list dedicated to this genre of games on DOS. This list is focusing on the games that were exclusive to DOS at the time of first release. This means you won't find games such as The Lost Vikings, Blackthorn, Flashback, Another World, Prince of Persia, Super Frog, James Pond, Stormlord, Zool, Prehistoric, Titus the Fox, Earthworm Jim, or Abuse on this list. Even though these games were all fantastic, they were all multi-platform titles at the time of first release, appearing on other platforms such as the Apple II, Amiga, ZX Spectrum, Linux, and even consoles. I wanted to focus on the games that you couldn't experience anywhere else but DOS at the time. Although some of these were eventually ported to other systems, they were at least for a time exclusive to DOS. The best part about a list like this? The majority of these games have a shareware or even freeware version, meaning you can download and play these gems, or at least significant portions of them, for yourself totally legally. There's lots of memories tied to this list. Let's get started! Alien Rampage has a bit of a strange history behind it. It was initially developed by Apogee under the title Ravager, using an engine they developed for the fourth entry in the Duke Nukem series that would return to its 2D side-scrolling roots, tentatively titled Duke Nukem Forever. That project was scrapped, and the name later reused for the first-person shooter follow-up. They would still use the engine for that game to develop Ravager. At some point though, they sold this project to Softdisk and developer Inner Circle Creations, who finished the game, renamed it to Alien Rampage, and released it in 1996. In this game, you play as an alien named Krupok, who hasn't taken too kindly to the fact that his ship has been shot down and crash-landed on an inhospitable alien planet. He seeks out to seek parts to fix his ship and shoot anything that gets in his way to smithereens. The game's Duke Nukem origins are clear, as Krupok has a number of powerful firearms at his disposal that are all satisfying to use, though the game has many improvements. He can fire in multiple directions, including diagonals, even when he's climbing or jumping, and the game's visuals are absolutely stellar, with multiple layers of parallax scrolling and a vivid full VGA colour palette. The game didn't hold back on the gore either, as defeated enemies would explode into messes of blood and guts. There were some puzzle elements included that often required the assistance of friendly NPCs called Morgs. You could buy ammo from shops that were found throughout the game, and some levels had you piloting vehicles. Alien Rampage was also exceptionally difficult, but it was the good kind of difficult. The only real downside to the game was that it contained no music at all, which was a strange omission. Honestly, if this game had a decent soundtrack, it would actually be higher on this list, but even without one, it's good enough to make the number 10 spot. It's a pity this gem has been largely forgotten about, probably mostly due to the fact that it was released during a time where everything was moving to 3D. A shareware version of the game that contains the first few levels is floating around on the internet. However, the full game has recently been released on Steam and GOG.com. Alien Carnage was co-developed by Interactive Binary Illusions and SubZero Software, and published by Apogee, who are now known as 3D Realms. It was originally released under the title Halloween Harry, but Apogee suggested changing the name out of concerns that it may limit sales outside of the Halloween season. In this game, the player takes control of Harry as he tries to thwart the plans of evil aliens who have taken over Earth and are turning innocent civilians into mindless zombies. The game was first released in 1993 and featured full 256 colour VGA graphics. The full version had 4 episodes that could be played in any order, while the shareware version featured the first episode only. The basic goal of each level was to navigate the large environments to find and rescue hostages. The game was unique in the fact that instead of jumping, Harry had a jetpack that he could use to fly around. However, the fuel for his jetpack was shared with his flamethrower that was his primary weapon, so it was often a balancing act. Throughout the level, Harry could purchase additional weapons that had limited ammo, such as homing missiles, from special dispensers, using coins he collected from destroyed enemies to do so. The game also featured nicely detailed cinematics before each mission. Alien Carnage was a pretty unique game that worked surprisingly well. While not the most original concept in the world, the game had some pretty interesting mechanics and good replay value. In 2007, it was released as freeware, and in 2014, it even received an official update to run natively under Windows. A sequel, named Zombie Wars, was released in 1996. Released in 1992, Jill of the Jungle was one of the first games produced by Epic Megagames, now known as Epic Games, long before they became famous for titles such as Unreal and Gears of War. In this game, you played as an Amazon named Jill in a side-scrolling platformer, being able to jump and attack enemies using a variety of weapons such as throwing knives and spinning blades. Some levels even had her transform into an animal such as a fish or a bird in order to navigate through them. The game was split into 3 episodes, as many shareware games did back then, which were sold separately and eventually together in one set: Jill of the Jungle, Jill Goes Underground, and Jill Saves the Prince. The game was technologically impressive for 1992, even if it's a little hard to see it nowadays. It fully utilised VGA colours and took full advantage of Sound Blaster hardware with synthesised music and sound effects. For the most part, the game played pretty well, although the controls were quite twitchy and needed some getting used to. The first and third episodes offered an overworld. In the first episode, this just looked like a normal level, while in the third episode it was more of a traditional top-down map. Strangely, the second episode had no such thing, and the levels just played sequentially. The levels themselves weren't just straight run-and-gun affairs though, as you could only throw a limited number of projectiles at once, and often required keys or other items to progress. It was Epic Megagames' first big hit, and there wasn't really much else that competed with it on a technical and gameplay level back then. While the game never received an official sequel, it did receive a follow-up of sorts a year later. Developed by Epic Megagames and released in 1993, Zargon, or Zargon the Mystery of the Blue Builders, consisted of 3 unique parts: Beyond Reality, The Secret Chamber, and Zargon's Fury, and was kind of a spiritual successor to Jill of the Jungle. The gameplay was very similar, but it improved in a number of areas, such as sound, visuals, and controls. While some of the Jill of the Jungle developers contributed to the project, it was mostly handled by a separate team. In Zargon, you played as a dude named Malvinius Havisham on a quest to destroy the evil Zargon. As mentioned, the gameplay is almost identical to Jill of the Jungle, as you ran, jumped, and climbed your way through each level to find the exit, that once again often required you to search to find items to progress. Instead of throwing weapons though, Malvinius had some kind of laser gun thing that you could find various upgrades for, such as rapid fire, that for some reason looked like it fired out of his groin. Groin or no groin though, you could actually control your shots to move them up and down after firing them, which was a major improvement. At certain points in the game, Malvinius could mysteriously turn into an animal like a bumblebee, and could also sometimes pilot vehicles like submarines. This game also had an overworld map like Jill Saves the Prince, and while navigating between levels, you could additionally find journal entries that revealed more of the story. The enemies here looked more like fantasy monsters than the real animals that were found in Jill's games. However, the game did have at least one significant gameplay difference, and that was that you could purchase certain items at any time during the game using special emeralds you could collect inside levels. While the Jill of the Jungle games remain classics in their own right, Zargon took a well-established formula and improved upon it in almost every aspect. If you want to try it out, the complete game was released as freeware in 2008. I bet many of you have fond memories of this one. Cosmo's Cosmic Adventure was released by Apogee in 1992 and follows the adventures of an alien named Cosmo who is in search of his missing parents. One of the major mechanics in the game was Cosmo's suction cup hands that allowed him to cling onto and climb up walls. Cosmo actually defeated his enemies by jumping on their heads, something that was in truth highly unusual for a PC platformer, which sounds like a bit of an odd thing to say when this was how a lot of popular console platformers worked. What was also kind of strange is that the game supported ad-lib music but still used the PC speaker for its sound effects. The first episode was released as shareware while the remaining 2 could be purchased. Cosmo was given 4 hits before he lost a life, but could gather special pickups to restore his health and increase his maximum health. The levels were bright and colourful and featured some advanced features such as parallax scrolling, although this took its toll on older hardware at the time. There were plenty of different enemies and hazards to overcome, and some levels even had a kind of puzzle element to them, as you needed to find specific items in order to progress. The game offered plenty of collectibles too, that all added to your total score and mixed up the gameplay in some levels by giving you a kind of hovercraft thing to fly around on. The game even featured a cameo from another one of Apogee's popular characters, none other than Duke Nukem, who shamelessly plugged his upcoming game.
I am back.
So then, Duke Nukem 2 sits squarely as a game that bridges the original Duke Nukem and Duke Nukem 3D. While the original game was a little simplistic, the sequel really upped the ante, with faster pace, more explosions, high detailed graphics, a full soundtrack, realistic sound effects, more variety in level design, and more enemies. The game fully supported Sound Blaster hardware for both its rocking music and destructive sound effects, and even featured some voiceovers. It was released by Apogee in 1993, 2 years after the original game, and was split into 4 episodes, the first of which was the shareware version. On the technical level, the game blew the original out of the water, and blew most other 2D side-scrolling games around at the time out of the water too. In Duke Nukem 2, Duke has been captured by evil aliens called Megagames, who plan to use their famous Super Mega Encephalossucker to imprint his brain patterns on their XG5 Thinkomatic war computer in an effort to win the war against Earth. Duke, of course, breaks free of his confinement and sets out on a new mission to destroy the Megagames and save Earth again. The sequel featured a number of new gameplay mechanics, including being able to climb across horizontal poles, climb ladders, shoot in multiple directions, and use teleporters and elevators. In addition to his standard blaster, Duke could pick up 3 different kinds of ammo: rockets, lasers, or flamethrowers, as well as a rapid fire upgrade. Most levels required him to find some kind of keycard to progress past barriers, and some had additional objectives such as destroying radar dishes. In other levels, Duke even got to pilot some vehicles. Leaving a path of destruction behind you was always satisfying. The game was re-released on Steam in 2013 with a few notable changes. Duke now wore sunglasses, so he resembled his modern design a little closer, and the graphics were all given a sharper and more detailed look. Biomenace was one of the last games directly developed by Apogee before changing their name to 3D Realms, and it definitely shows. By this time, in late 1993, they had mastered their craft of creating 2D side-scrolling platformers. Built on a heavily modified version of id Software's Commander Keen engine, Biomenace had the player take control of protagonist Snake Logan on his mission to eradicate the mutants that have started invading Metro City. The game was codenamed Biohazard during development, which may have been part of the reason why Capcom decided to rename their game with that title to Resident Evil when they released it outside of Japan. Biomenace actually had kind of similar gameplay to the original 2D Duke Nukem games, except, at least in my opinion, it was superior even to Duke Nukem 2. This game was somewhat slower paced, but the environments were much more open, and even featured building interiors. A major area with Snake trumped Duke was that he could pick up secondary weapons, such as grenades, in addition to different ammo types for his main gun. The mutant Snake faces are all suitably grotesque, and satisfyingly explode into jibs when they die. The goal of each level is to rescue a hostage after finding a way to free them from their confinement, who would then provide you with the means to exit the level and/or offer some clues. Throughout each level were tons of doors that could be opened with keys you collected, and a number of levels had hidden secrets behind a number of coloured switches, with the specific sequence hidden somewhere else in the level. The game was split into 3 episodes: Dr. Mangle's Lab, The Hidden Lab, and Master Kane, with the first released as shareware. Following a poll on the 3D Realms forums asking fans what discontinued game they'd like to see come back, the full game was released as freeware in 2005. Monster Bash was another game developed and published by Apogee in 1993, released a few months earlier than Biomass. Apogee were pretty good at making their games all play and feel different to each other, and Monster Bash was perhaps the pinnacle of this. You played as Johnny Dash, a boy who is on a mission to rescue his dog Tex, as well as all the other pets that have been pet-napped by the evil Count Chuck to turn them into soldiers in his army. The game used high-quality EGA graphics, a very well-done ad-lib musical score, and great-sounding, creepy sound effects. The general idea behind each level was to kill monsters, like zombies, disembodied hands, skeletons, werewolves, witches, and so on, using Johnny's slingshot and unlimited supply of rocks, while avoiding hazards such as spikes, snakes, and flying knives. Throughout the level, he could collect special types of rocks as a temporary power-up, even a homing rocket, and monsters often needed to be taken out in stages. For example, killing a zombie would cause his head to roll around that could still hurt you until you destroyed that too. In each level, there were a number of pets locked away in cages that Johnny needed to set free before he could walk through the exit, and many of these were hidden away in hard-to-reach locations off the beaten path. Parts of the environment could also break or be destroyed. Again, this was not particularly common back then, especially for a PC platform. As was normal during this time, Monster Bash was split into episodes, and had a shareware version that featured the first one. The episodes here weren't given specific names though, and were just kinda boringly called Part 1, Part 2 and Part 3. It was re-released with Windows support in 2014. After the success of Invasion of the Vorticons, id Software got to work on a new Commander Keen sequel trilogy called Goodbye Galaxy, although during development they decided to split the third part out into a separate game titled Aliens Ate My Babysitter. The games that would eventually be collectively called Goodbye Galaxy were titled Secret of the Oracle, commonly referred to as Keen 4, and The Armageddon Machine, commonly referred to as Keen 5, and were released in 1991. It's these two games where Commander Keen really hit its peak. As with most id Software titles, these games broke new ground technologically, featuring a pseudo 3D view, parallax scrolling, full VGA graphics, in-game ramps, disappearing platforms, moving backgrounds, and music and sound from dedicated sound hardware. Most of this was unheard of in 1991. Keen 4 was released as shareware, and Keen 5 required a purchase. These games saw the 8-year-old child genius Billy Blaze, aka Commander Keen, trying to save the galaxy. Both games featured a top-down overworld map that allowed you to navigate from level to level, and the levels themselves were nicely detailed 2D side-scrollers with plenty of secrets to discover. Keen used a special stun gun as a weapon that required ammo that was found throughout each level to permanently knock out an enemy, although some enemies were immune to it. Keen also retained his signature pogo stick from the original games that allowed him to jump higher and defeat some enemies, was able to climb up and down poles, and even swim. Many levels were intricate mazes that the player needed to navigate through to find specific special gems or keycards to open locked doors that were full of enemies and other hazards like spikes and toxic sludge. Some enemies even created hazards as they moved around. You can die by touching slug poo in this game. Just one hit from an enemy or hazard was enough to end Keen's life, so even though the games allowed you to save pretty much anywhere and gave you opportunities to earn extra lives, they weren't the easiest games around. The famous Dopefish first appeared in a specific level in Keen 4. Unfortunately, no further Keen games were made after Goodbye Galaxy and Aliens Ate My Babysitter. There were plans to develop a new series of games, but they were scrapped after the huge success of Wolfenstein 3D, prompting the team to begin development on Doom instead. By 1994, Epic Megagames had been releasing well-received games for a few years already, including the games Jewel of the Jungle and Zargon that both appeared earlier in this list. However, the one game releasing this year that catapulted them into the limelight and established them as a powerhouse PC developer that could compete head-on with companies like id Software and Apogee was undoubtedly Jazz Jackrabbit. It would also be the game that caused designer Cliff Bleszinski's career to really take off, as he would go on to design games such as Unreal and Gears of War. Jazz Jackrabbit was an incredible looking, fast-paced and smooth 2D platformer with an absolutely amazing soundtrack, smooth animations and tight controls, with full support for Sound Blaster hardware and PC game controllers such as the Gravis gamepad. This was finally the PC's answer to popular console platformers like Sonic the Hedgehog. The game had you take control of the eponymous Jazz the Jackrabbit, an anthropomorphic green hare, as he attempts to rescue the princess of his planet Caritas, who has been captured by the evil tortoise Devonshire. Yes, the game is another take on the classic Tortoise and the Hare fairy tale. On his journey, Jazz needs to travel to different planets before confronting a boss. The levels moved incredibly fluidly, and didn't skip a beat no matter how fast Jazz was running or how high he was jumping. However, you did understandably need a relatively beefy PC, for the time anyway, to run the game smoothly, especially when lots of action was happening on screen. Jazz defeated his enemies by shooting them, and he could collect various types of ammo for his gun, including a large fire blaster, twin missiles, and bouncing grenades. Scattered around the levels were rapid fire upgrades, carrots to restore Jazz's health, other pickups to earn points and extra lives, and special power-ups that would give Jazz abilities like temporary invincibility and supersonic speed. Some parts of the levels could be shot and destroyed to reveal hidden areas and even hidden secret levels, and each planet also contained a bonus level if you found a special big red gem that switched the perspective to a third-person 3D view behind Jazz as he collected blue gems in order to win extra lives. Each world had a unique theme and atmosphere, and some levels changed up the gameplay by giving Jazz a hoverboard to ride on, or hiding a parrot buddy that would assist you by shooting enemies if you found it. Jazz Jackrabbit was split into 6 episodes, with the first episode released as shareware. A complete version of the game that included all 6 episodes, plus some bonus episodes, was released on CD format, and 2 special holiday-themed shareware releases, called Holiday Hare 94 and Holiday Hare 95, also followed. A true sequel, named Jazz Jackrabbit 2, was released in 1998 for Windows, and is considered in many ways to be superior to its predecessor. Both the original and the sequel have recently been made available on GOG.com. So that's it! The top 10 MS-DOS exclusive side-scrolling platformers. I hope that this was a great opportunity for many of you to reminisce about the good old days, and that you appreciate all of the footage and the actual iconic title screens of each of these games for that extra dose of nostalgia. No list like this would be complete without some honourable mentions, which you'll see here as well as in the intro to the video. Hopefully, you learned something from this list, and even if you didn't, you were at least entertained. Did I miss any DOS exclusive side-scrolling platformers that you think should have been included? I'd love to hear them. Drop me some comments below and give me a thumbs up if you liked the video. Thanks for watching!